Good times and great music at 2 RFM 103.7. Time to have a look at some of the things happening in the world of politics. We do that every couple of weeks with Dr. Jim Jose, our Professor of Politics from the University of Newcastle. And good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Mark.
Seems to be a bit of a conference happening. You may have heard across in Canada at the moment, the G7. And these are one of these conferences where lots of world leaders get together. In a general sense, the G7, what is it? And what are its aims or what its projected aims?
Well, the G7 is a meeting of the 7 major advanced industrial countries, if you like, of Europe and North America. So you've got Canada, which is hosting it this year. Then you've got the US, you've got France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom. So they're the 7. Up until about formally 2018, but in practice since 2014, it's been the G7. Before that time, it was the G8 because Russia used to be a member, but it was suspended in 2014 owing to its annexation of Crimea. It joined formally in 1998. So from 1998, it was the G8. Then from 2014 to 18, it then became the G7.
All right, so that's the geography of who's in and who's out in a manner of speaking.
I should mention the European Union is also, it has enumerated status. I'm not quite sure what that actually means. It attends every year, but it's not a formal member in terms of voting rights and so forth, but it has a status that other organisations
they can be 7A or maybe 7E for European Union.
Well, yes. Whereas there are invited countries, and this year Australia's invited. It's in 2019, 2021, and 2023 we're invited, but in the other years we haven't. It all depends on, in part, what are seen to be the dominant issues and so forth. And this time around, Australia got an invite. I think the Canadian Prime Minister was keen to have another Commonwealth country there, but there are other invited countries as well. For example, India is also an invited guest. I think Mexico is also invited. It'll be sort of interesting to see how it pans out because high on the agenda, apart from the security issues and the issues to do with world peace and current crises that are happening in the Middle East, the issues of international trade, global trade, and the tariffs that the US is currently sort of imposing unilaterally, that will also be a major issue. And if I take us, just sorry to cut you off there, Mark, just take us back to 2018 when Canada hosted it the last time. Donald Trump was US president, and he was very annoyed with the Canadian Prime Minister who pushed hard for freeing up global trade and basically was not particularly enamoured of the tariffs because back in 2018, Donald Trump was pushing US tariffs again, I should say before the last time, and the communique that the G7 put out, he refused to sign off on the economic section, which was about how to keep global trade as free as possible. So whether history is going to repeat itself, Mark, in this time around, but certainly global trade is going to be a major issue as well.
Yeah, for certain. If nothing else, we're walking through a bit of a déjà vu moment and maybe everything that's old is new again. But the nations that are there, Jim, and including the nations such as Australia that are on the sidelines of, everybody wants to sort of go back home to their host nation feeling that they have put the best case forward for their country. So there's a lot of that jockeying for position as well. And how does that generally play? Does a lot of things quietly happen behind the scenes when some of these leaders meet and the meetings take place? I'm guessing, yeah?
Oh, most certainly. I mean, Anthony Albanese will be quite busy sort of meeting with other leaders outside of the G7 leaders that he'll also be setting up and trying to have meetings with. I mean, the big thing I think here is that in principle, the G7 tries to set an agenda for the coming 12 months in which the countries agree on how to conduct themselves in various arenas, in particular security, towards world peace, all of that sort of thing. as I also mentioned, trade. But, a more cynical perspective would be they all sit around the table and they all say all these wonderful things about what they're all going to do and cooperate, and then they all go home and immediately forget it, or don't necessarily follow through. So, for example...
So you've met the world of politics before, have you?
Yes. Now, that's a cynical interpretation, but I think the intention is to try and ensure a degree of orderliness in the way in which the major powers operate in the world and getting some consensus. So, I mean, one big thing that they did, I think it was either the last G7 or the G7 before, where they agreed on a minimum tax for global companies. So I think it was about 15% that across the globe there would be a minimum amount of tax that these companies would have to pay, regardless of all the other perks and lurks that they might get up to avoid paying tax. That was seen as a way of trying to ensure a degree of consistency and certainty for global companies, at the same time as enabling poorer countries to gain some benefit from their operations. Now, in principle, that was a wonderful thing. In practice, I'm not sure how that's actually been playing out, in particular since I think one of Donald Trump's executive orders was that he would take action against any country that penalised a US company unfairly. Now, definition of fairness, from Donald Trump's perspective, any company that has to pay tax to a foreign government and they don't want to are being treated unfairly.
Yeah, every country has their own definition of these things, I guess.
But that to one side, I think it's reasonable to think that the G7 has good intentions, whether they play out in practice. And of course, our Prime Minister is looking to sort of maximise what he can for Australia, particularly in terms of shoring up relationships and ensuring that we are seen as a responsible global middle power, as it were.
Well, we'll see how all that plays out over the next few days. Jim, as always, a pleasure. We'll catch you next time you're in town.
Yep. No worries. Thanks, Mark.
There he is, our Professor of Politics from the University of Newcastle, Dr. Jim Jose, on the G7 this morning at 2 RFM.
A broadcast service of the University of Newcastle.